No, we're live now.
Today's mug.
We should be live now.
We are live
should I
now.
show my mug? Is that what's going on?
Today's mug is I Love Spreadsheets. Yours is management in what?
No, chargement en cours.
What does that mean?
It means loading.
Perfect. And this week's t-shirt, mine is 9 Inch Nails. And apparently I'm rocking a grunge aesthetic, Gen Xer, according to Willem.
And I have a Lord of the Rings t-shirt.
I didn't see the Gandalf the Grey down there. Okay, that's
well,
cool.
No, because I hadn't stood up.
Yeah, no, that's cool. That's really cool. So this is where we take a question asked by a young person and we take it apart, explore it with lots of tangents to see how it relates to the many, many things that cover modern life. And we had some comments after the last episode.
We did? Yes, we did.
What were some of the things that you heard, Willem?
I heard two people tell me that they really loved it. They loved listening to the whole conversation. And we have one friend in common that we both talked to who said they really enjoyed it. And I think you can maybe go into more detail, but they said that we could go longer. We could have more than an hour's conversation, go into more detail about each topic. And then again, which is part of the conversation, I guess, I was like, well, I guess the conversation is meant to be tangent. So I don't know how much we're supposed to get to the point, but which is an exercise in letting myself go into tangents, which is what I'm not supposed to do elsewhere, but I still do probably way too much. Yeah.
It's a superpower.
I'm also trying to watch my uhs and ums. I do so much of them, even though I've been podcasting and listening to myself for 5 years. I still do tons.
Well, I've got pretty good at it, I think.
At just getting rid of filler words? But you must have other filler words to replace them, no?
Probably and.
But I mean, you could do better. I think everybody always has some version of a filler word, but I have a lot and I need to get rid of them.
That's
and
why
anybody who's told me before is just stop doing it. I'm like, okay, that's really helpful. Thank you.
That's part of what we're doing here. We're practicing. So yes. He also said that, we could go deep on topics and explore them. However, I think the tangents make things so interesting because both of us can connect very disparate ideas in a very interesting way. So some of the feedback I had was that my background's really boring and I don't care. I want it boring because I want you listening.
Really boring.
I want you listening to what I'm saying.
Come on, give us a tropical island or something, like something unboring.
Like when using Zoom, actually maybe like is one of my filler words, but using Zoom, I think it's my skin tone, but it always like disappears.
No, it's not good. The virtual Zoom backgrounds are not good. If you really want to have a proper background, you need a green screen and to change the background.
One day, maybe.
But other thing about tangents I was going to say, and that's what I said to somebody else who mentioned it.
Yep.
I really love listening to podcast conversations because they do go all over the place. And I love having those kinds of conversations. It's a very different exercise than giving a talk or a speech where you're supposed to get to a point. So I think the nature of the kind of conversations that we're having is to let ourselves go into a lot of different, with keeping that when I like having our thread, that is the question that you're going to be asking me, even though I'm like nerve-wracked because I have no preparation. And I'm like, okay, I've talked about the book I just read. So what else am I going to talk about now? I'm going to have to go and fish in my memory and probably like be worried about not being.
But don't forget that we do have things to offer people from our perspective. And I always like the conversations with you because you do explore things and follow. Your ability to follow an idea and see where it goes, I think is incredibly useful and valuable. And it's probably relevant to your industry, I guess.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it is. So, and actually, other thing about the question, the student that asked the question, you heard back from them. I think they enjoyed.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
The main point is to first. Well, are we being useful to the students asking the questions or question?
So yeah, I'll get to that in a second because the apart from the background and exploring things in depth, I did have some comments from a few different students. So the student that asked the question found it very interesting what we're saying, and he said something like, it really made him think. So that mutual friend of ours that said that we never answered the question, maybe we could start with, when I ask you the question for today's episode, we'll give a direct answer and then we'll move on. So I think that's what we'll do. But the student who watched
Yeah, but I also go into tangents because I don't have a direct answer.
I know. But we'll give a direct answer and then we'll go on to a tangent, which is fine.
Okay.
But the student who asked last week's question, which was, what's the biggest threat to jobs?
Yeah.
He did watch it. He was watching it live. He thought it was very interesting and really made him think. So, and he's doing his A levels. So he's about to go, first year of exams before he goes to university.
Okay. So yeah, for anybody not in the UK, that's the last year of high school. Is that right?
Yeah, the second last year of high school.
There's 2 last years of high school? How does that work?
Well, the second last, the penultimate year.
Penultimate year. Okay, got it.
There we go. So that maybe that's an English.
Second to last.
Second to, yeah. Second last. That's English. All right. Anyway.
Okay.
So the other comment I had was from someone who's at university. I think they're in their second year or their final year, and they said thanks for a really interesting, thought-provoking discussion podcast. So
I think that's what we were going for, right? So that's awesome.
Yeah. And
you did tell them to share to other people.
I took a screenshot. Actually, good point. I need to tell them to share, but I need to take a screenshot of what he said and just post it everywhere. But then I had some colleagues. I had one of my colleagues who was listening last week, and he said it was really interesting listening to the ideas that were beyond my subject at school, which is mostly business, but also psychology. So it was, and that's really one of the things that I value in this conversation, is I can go beyond and explore the things that I want to explore in the classroom and want to say in the classroom, but I can't because I have to wedge it into teaching, although I do anyway. But anyway.
Don't tell that, we're recorded and we're live. Don't say that.
Yeah, enough senior teachers have seen my lessons to know that
you kind of do that. You get the job done. Okay, great. Should we get to the question?
We could.
Oh, do you want to do something else first?
Well, I don't think.
You want to share the fact that we're live? I mean, I posted it on Facebook, but so actually for next week, we're learning. Okay, so for next week, we can schedule the event on YouTube so that we can promote it in advance and tell people it's happening.
Okay, great.
And if we really want the big audience, then we need to be airing at a US friendly time. But that's for maybe later. I don't know. We'll see. If the videos are available for watching later anyway, it doesn't really matter.
That's true. It's but this is a nice time. My brain is kind of with it, and
I mean, it works for me, so I don't really want to do. It really works for me too, so that's good.
What the other thing is, we had live comments and we couldn't access them last week.
So I've kept my YouTube window open, so there's nobody that's chatting right now on the thing. So
I don't know how to do that.
There's 2 watching now, which I think is me and you.
Okay. All right, cool.
You don't know how to do what part?
How to see the live chat, if anyone.
Are you on the YouTube page that is showing live right now?
I'm on your YouTube channel.
Yeah, if you go to the live video, but be careful just to put out the sound immediately because we're going to hear ourselves with a few seconds delay. And then on the right-hand side, there's the chat. Okay.
Well, let me mute myself and I'm going to ask you a question so you can talk and then I'll sort that out. So the question I want to ask is,
okay,
and this isn't the question of the episode yet.
Oh, this is not, but it's already 10 past, right?
That doesn't matter. This is a terrible tangent. It's fine. It's a terrible tangent. I'll loop it back. Don't worry. The question,
opinions about alliterations, are they good or bad? No. Okay.
That's not the question. The question I'm going to ask you is, you've accomplished a lot in the last week as a result of knowing that we were doing this, right? You've been
in parts, yes.
So the question I'm asking is,
I should close the curtain behind me. Yes, what is the question, please?
The question is, how do you get yourself to take action when you don't necessarily want to on things that are important?
Aha. Okay, I have okay, sure. Okay, so you're going, so how do I sell? So I guess it's deadlines and emergencies. It's very, very special. I don't think anybody else in the world is like that. And in my particular special case right now, which I don't think anybody else is dealing with this in the midst of this pandemic, is I've not been making any kind of money, and I spent a lot of money last year to celebrate my 40th birthday and to move to Paris. And my whole budget, my life budgeting hadn't exactly accounted for, I had accounted that it would take me several months and probably more than in the US to settle myself into Paris and to get earning money again, because I didn't have any steady gigs. And I did have some work at the end of last year, and I had a lot of really good appointments with people in Paris. So I was kind of recreating my professional network in Paris. I say recreating my professional network in Paris.
Professional, yep.
Yeah, because I had not really worked in Paris for 15 years. So I knew, I did one gig in 2016, sorry, in Paris, or partly Paris. It was European, but it was Paris based. Anyway, long story short, I hadn't exactly accounted for the long 2-month strike, December, January, and then the pandemic. So right now, my emergency and what's getting me moving is the end of the lockdown, and with everything opening up and me going, okay, well now I really, really need to get myself moving, because otherwise I won't be able to pay my rent.
So this does relate.
Is kind of like not desperation, but not far off.
But this does relate to the question that I'm going to ask. So because one of the things that my students talk about, and
that's only one part of the answer.
Right, sure. But the one of the things that my students talk about and ex-pupils I meet talk about is the avoiding procrastination, the getting going. You know what you need to do, you know what you should do, but you don't always do it.
Yeah, and until the last minute, ideas, but sort of.
Yeah. So the question.
I'm doing things this week that I'm like, why didn't I do this 2 months ago? Why didn't I do this 3 years ago?
Yeah.
But then again, I did other things, Sorry. All right. So I interrupted your.
You interrupted my interruption of your tangent.
Yes. Exactly.
Yes, that was what happened. So actually it was what happened. So here's the question.
Yes.
So, and it does relate to what you're talking about. And these are his exact words. For someone who will hopefully go into business one day, and he's asking me, what would you say are the next steps after A-level or at the moment that could help me get closer to achieving my goal?
The goal being to get into business?
Yes. As he's written it, and he wrote it on an email to me, that's what I take it to mean. So I'm going to read it again so we can actually break up the bits. For someone who will hopefully go into business one day, so he wants to be working in business. I don't know if he means owning his own business or working for a business. I think he means working in business, and then eventually he might want to own his own business, from what I know about these people. So what would you say are the next steps after A-level? A-levels being the final exams that UK students take before they go to university.
Yeah.
So the next steps after A-level or at the moment that could help me get closer to achieving my goal. So what I understand from that question is he wants to go into business, and he wants to know what are the next steps after A-level, but he also wants to know what are the next steps at the moment that could help him get to going into business. And I think dealing with procrastination, getting into action, knowing what you want to do are really important ideas within that. What do you think?
Well, I think first, your idea of answering the question first and directly. Were we already recording when we said that? I think we were. No? Yes, maybe.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. Anyway, I can do that.
Great. You give your direct answer.
The straight and direct answer is, I don't know. The question's too vague.
All right, let me make it less vague.
Because like, what does business actually mean? Business is anything and everything. And just as you pointed out, we're not sure if it's your own business or somebody else's business. And in business, I'm like, well, if you want to go into the medical business, you might want to try medical school. But then if you want to go into the lawyer business, that's not the same school you should go to.
So really, he needs to be specific about the question he's asking and know what he wants to go into.
Yeah, and you should pick specific questions.
None of the questions.
No, I'm just joking. The broad ones are very good conversation. This is a great, we can have a great conversation with it, but I'm afraid we're not going to be able to answer very specifically to his question.
Well, I'm going to give a direct answer, which is
You might know the person, so that might help. I don't know.
That's true. That's true. So I think my direct answer would be pick something specific and then work out what you need to do right now. That's one bit. And
Which
then
is
the other
designing
bit
a
is,
strategy, and that's what I do for clients.
oh, cool. Okay. And then
That's another direction we can go in. Yeah.
the other part I would say is take action now. A bit like we're doing this podcast, whatever action it is. And there's that old cliche quote of the longest journey begins with the smallest step, or the be willing to be terrible and keep going. And that I'm going to tell this story live because I just told it to you. So I've been looking at podcasts. One of my friends who we both know recommended that I look at Joe Rogan's podcast, and this might come up in the conversation. And he's signed.
It's coming up in the conversation now.
Yeah, well, yeah, but I'm going to relate it.
Yeah, sure.
So I don't know how many episodes he's done. He's moving
tons. I mean, he's got millions of people listening to this show.
Yeah, millions.
He's one of the biggest, if not the biggest. He's in the top 3 or 5 most listened to podcasts.
Yeah, for sure. And
I don't really listen to it, but
I haven't either really listened to it.
I tried it a couple of times, I think, but
you didn't quite get into it, did you?
No, and I don't know if it's because it was a mood question or I should try again, but I didn't seem to like his vibe. I'm not sure why, and I should try again to be able to say for certain if I didn't like it, if it was just me or I don't know.
So I'm probably going to try as well. But what's interesting is I watched a little bit of an episode, one of the later ones, and then I went back and looked at episode 1, and oh my God, it's over 10 years old. It's like 2009 or something. And not only is it hilarious, it's hilarious because it's so old web. Like web.
Was it video and audio or just audio?
It was video and audio. And it wasn't the start, like, I was like, what am I watching? There was no kind of introduction or anything like that. It was just him on the screen. It looked like he was checking Twitter and stuff. But the thing that was most disconcerting, he had this snowflake background going the whole time. Like, I don't know if it was, I watched about 10 minutes. I was like, what is going on? This background. Like,
was it distracting? You just didn't like it, or was it weird, or?
It was distracting and slightly weird, and I didn't understand why it was there.
You prefer your plain and boring background.
Of course. Plain and boring, emphasis on what I'm saying. But here's my point.
Yeah.
That he started taking action and he did it, and it doesn't matter if it's terrible. Kind of like what we're doing, kind of like what I would say in answer to that student. If you want to go into business, why not find a business idea and start a business now? You could.
Oh yeah, if you're serious about it. Yeah. And most business people, I mean, a lot of the kind of famous quote unquote business stories of people telling those kinds of stories are people that had like a lemonade stand when they were a kid, and they just, or whatever type of business.
Yeah.
And whatever the motivation was, they had like a crazy motivation to either make money or to be selling things or to, and usually whatever they are. And I don't know if that's what that student is interested in. I don't really know. But I like that you said, here's my point. So that, do you think that answers our common friends? Do you think if we say, here's my point, it makes it so?
I'm sure I said that last week, but I don't know. But I don't care because this is terrible tangents, so we can go on whatever tangent.
So the other thing I would say is, and that's to the answer on like, what are the next steps, which can be equally just doing something now, but also finding out. And that allows you to be more specific about what you're looking for.
But don't you think you find out by doing, perhaps?
You could do both.
That's true.
Just like asking us is one of the ways he's doing something.
This is true. Yeah.
Asking us is one of the ways he's doing something. And one of the things that we're going to be saying, that I'm saying is like, well, find out a bit more about what you're interested in so that you can learn and pursue that particular direction.
Well, because last week you did talk about how you got into brand strategy and it wasn't what you expected.
Oh yeah, we didn't do a short bit. We should just do maybe when we start the episode, a short, quick introduction. Hi, I'm Willem. I'm brand strategy.
I don't think we need to. We're jumping straight into the narrative. People know who you are already. Let's just get on with it. But what got you interested in brand strategy? Because it wasn't like it wasn't a definite like I want to do this. Or did it emerge?
It was a definite I want to do this, but not when I was in high school. That came later, much later.
But the way you got into it was by speaking to people and the mentoring. And
so yeah, I mean, like Didn't I tell that story? I mean, it doesn't matter. I told that story a bunch of times. I can go into it.
in more
But you
detail?
asked me, the question is, how did I get into it?
So the question is, well, here's how I'm linking it, right? So
Okay.
so he's saying, what should I do right now to get to where I want to get to, whatever it is.
Mhm.
You knew you wanted to work in brand strategy.
I didn't know that in high school.
Oh, not in high school, but you
No.
knew at some point in your life that's what you wanted to do, right? You
Yes.
made a conscious choice, like that's what I want to
Yeah,
do.
yeah.
What was the first step you took?
When I found out about brand strategy and I thought, okay, I want to do that.
Yeah.
Okay. So I started looking at, all right, so who are these people that are brand strategists? What do they say? How are they? What do they talk about? What do they publish out there? And I started doing the same thing. So I started mimicking.
Oh wow.
I
Okay.
started imitating, and I kind of reinvented myself to be the person that was that job. So I started being a strategic planner, or planner is another of the words, because it's one of the originating words of the job,
Mhm.
of my particular job. It's like it's got more popular to say brand strategist than planner, and encompasses a few other things as well. But yeah, so I found out first by meeting somebody, and I was working in recruitment at the time, and I was working in recruitment as a stepping stone to be working in the creative marketing industries
Okay.
without really knowing in what capacity, because I had started my career in design, and I worked as a graphic designer for a couple of years, and then I worked in coaching and training and development for 3 years, and that's when I moved to London. And when I left that job, I kind of just needed money. I just needed money, and somebody said, "Oh," and I needed money, and I knew I wanted to go towards creative communications because that's what I did in design, and I was interested in that. And I
Mhm.
went in that direction first because I was interested in advertising, because I had a sense that I think mass communications is really interesting to find out about people, and I think it can be used to positive effect in the world.
Mhm.
And I grew up with iconic ads that I absolutely loved, and without overthinking the fact that there's a whole cynical and dark side to that I have and a lot of other people have, as advertising being the
Yeah.
slave and the engine of the horrible
Yeah.
capitalistic society and all the
Yeah.
worst stuff that we live in. True. And also there's a couple of amazing ads that I grew up with and that I quote forever, and then I'm like, I want to do that.
So
And then you easily forget that 99.9 of advertising is really, really bad. But
that's why I became a teacher, because at some point in my mid-20s, I realized that the data, I was data planning analyst for a media planning agency. So we would
yeah,
advise companies where they should advertise to
yeah,
get customers. But at some point in my mid-20s, I was like, I'm basically getting people to buy stuff they don't really want with money they don't really have. That
yeah,
was my thought. I was like, what am I doing? So
yeah.
that's why I became a teacher.
I
So there is that
understand.
dark side. But now I'm thinking,
I
what were
didn't do
the
the good.
ads?
I'm thinking I'm so bad. Maybe I should have become a teacher.
No, 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 no.
No.
Don't become a teacher. No. Yeah, no.
How about
But
a YouTube star? Do you think?
well, that's what they say. I want to be a YouTuber. I want to. That's what my nephews
We're
talk about.
YouTubers now.
Are we? Oh,
Well,
okay.
yeah, we are. We're
But
on YouTube
now,
right now. I'm like, my thing says we're live on YouTube. I'm
so we're
pointing there
YouTubers.
because in my screen it says live on YouTube here. If we go and if I flick, look, I'm on YouTube right now. I'm a YouTube. I don't know about star, but I'm on YouTube.
So we're YouTubers. Okay. But
We're
now I want
certainly
to know,
YouTubers.
which were the ads that really stuck with you? Please tell me, because
Oh, well, okay, yeah.
what were the ads?
So one campaign, so I talk about that, and I got a couple of old blog posts, because one of the first things to come to loop back to your original questions about the things that I did to go into brand strategy was one of
Started
the things
writing.
I started reading about brands and understanding them and thinking about what my favorite brands are, because that seemed to be a thing that the people in that job did, to think about it and to talk about it. So I started doing that, and I started as well thinking about what my favorite ad campaigns were, and I started sharing about that. One of them is the Kiss Cool. I don't think that brand exists in the UK, does it? Kiss Cool, it's a mint. Kiss Cool mint.
No, no, never heard of it.
It's a mint. Kiss Cool, it's called. And they had two generations of extremely iconic ad campaigns, completely bonkers, that I absolutely loved, and
Oh
that
wow.
both of them were widely quoted for years on middle school and then high school.
Okay.
By me and all my friends. The first one, so the tagline of Kiss Cool is having the second effects. There's the first and the second mint effect of Kiss Cool.
And why was it bonkers?
So I guess I'll describe it. It won't be as funny, and we can share the videos. The videos exist on YouTube. They're pretty old and they're pretty visual. So the first one, the most known of that series of ads is a dude dressed in a big rabbit fluffy costume that's about to appear on stage.
Okay.
And all the kids are asking for the rabbit. There's like tons of crazy kids going nuts and who want the performer to come on stage. And the performer is super stressed out by the kids. So he takes a mint, and the first effect is like it's cooling and relaxing. So he feels a lot more relaxed and feels like he could go on stage and appears on stage. And then you have the second effect, which is suddenly all the kids have been replaced by hunters who want to shoot him.
I wasn't expecting that. Okay.
No, that's why it's so funny.
I was not expecting that, because that's one of the reaps like both you and I love Rick and Morty.
The second ad campaign, I think it was done by another ad agency, is even weirder.
Because both you and I love Rick and Morty, and I was watching a couple of old episodes of Rick and Morty.
I hesitated starting to watch the brand new episodes. I'm waiting a little bit because they're not going to be a lot more for a while. So
I watched some of the newer ones, and Rick and Morty was recommended to me by a bunch of students.
So good.
About 3 years ago, because I said I liked Adventure Time. And they went,
I haven't gotten into that, but yeah.
That's very odd. My sister loves Adventure Time. But they all said, "Sir, you need to watch Rick and Morty." I was like, "What are you talking about? Is this another thing?"
So good.
What? And then I watched it. I was like, "Oh my God," I watched all of it in like
I devoured
3
them
days.
as well.
It's so good. But part of the reason I think it's great is because it's so weird, and it's so memorable, and it's so tangential. Like it's that show is terrible tangents. Like just the references and the weirdness, I think, is one of the things I love about it. So this ad is a mint and a guy dressed up in a rabbit, which immediately made me think of Donnie Darko. And
it's like a big pink fluffy rabbit, but yeah, okay. It's not Donnie Darko.
And
Donnie Darko, excellent movie, but yeah.
And then the kids turn into hunters.
Yeah.
Why did you because you liked it because it was weird, or it wasn't what you expected?
It's that plays into, it's very French humor. It's kind of dark. It's absurd and it's dark, and it's unexpected. So it was both surprising. It's funny because it's a funny twist. The second effect, and you're like, that's a mint. It's like it was pretty out there, and it was very successful. And then the second ad campaign, which is even weirder, I would have to show it to you. It's just, and that was one of the, not the first, but I think it was amongst the first uses of 3D animation for advertising, and like, as in, nationwide, big time, prime time advertising. And it was just a collection of extremely weird characters who were eating mints. And it was just, I can't even describe it. They just look like a sort of blobs with giant noses and hair, and what they're hanging out together. And they're like, "What are you doing?" "I'm having a Kiss Cool mint." And they just follow the mint, and then they go, and they lose all their hair. That's one of the various ads, and so it's so weird. And that one was immensely quoted by friends of mine. And
okay, so that was so you said there were 2 ads, like the Kiss Cool one was one. Was
2
there another
ranges,
ad?
so 2 campaigns at different times. As in, the first one with the rabbit was older, and there were several ads within the same vibe with like that kind of twist. The rabbit was one of them. And then a few years later, they just rebranded, did a whole new thing. There was a new vibe, and that campaign, but they still kept the second effect, but they just changed the whole. The second effect was just, the whole thing was just weird. It's great.
And that was the thing that got you into planning, strategy, branding.
No, that's not what got me into planning and strategy. That's what got
you into advertising.
The idea of wanting to do communications, creative communications, and advertising.
Okay.
Yeah. to say, okay, this is like, I want to do that kind of thing for a living. That's to create things and to participate in creating things that I didn't know how. And then I had several ideas when I was in high school. I wanted to work in video games, and I wanted to then make movies, and I didn't know really, to be honest, at all. I had no idea what I wanted.
So many of the guys I teach, they don't know, but they're expected to know. Their parents push them to know.
That's part of what's crazy is not that the kids don't know, and like your students is normal. It's normal at 15, 16, 12 not to know. I had no idea. What's crazy is the expectation that they should know at that age.
But it continues even further.
Yeah, it does. I had no idea what I wanted to do until like way later.
Yeah.
I still don't know.
But what's interesting is when you share those stories about the advertising campaign and the communications, and you want to do that, I can hear a thread of creativity and creating something.
Yeah, creating and sharing it with the world, and making people laugh, being entertaining. Because I also think that part of me is to thought-provoking. Yes. I mean, that's the words I put down for Ice Cream for Everyone as values. It's playful and it's thought-provoking. Oh, by the way, I'm not going to share the whole thing right now, but I'm since last week I've been developing material for workshops, and I've been developing my own methodologies for brand strategy. My own methodology, my model. And the way I'm going about this is to say, okay, I'm a brand strategist. There's a lot of other people that offer the same kinds of services and the same service. I'm not wildly different from them. So my model, you can find it if you just Google brand strategy model or brand positioning model. You can find a lot of different diagrams that are models. My model is not wildly original or crazy in any kind of way. It's just a different one. It's not. I don't think it's better than any others. It's got inspiration that comes from role-playing game character sheets, and I've been thinking about a brand character and what goes into a character.
Like all the qualities?
Yeah, different traits. Yeah, exactly. Different traits that come from having boiled down what a brand and a business is in different sections. And I'm not the only one to do that, but I've put some thinking into it. And then what I bring that's special, what I bring that's different is the play, where play meets strategy, and to have inspiration and mechanics that come from game design to put into the brand strategy process. So that's my point of difference. It's not necessarily what the model is, to try to say my model is different and better than everyone else's. I think it's just a different model. There's thinking inside of it. And anyway, the end result for now that I'm still fiddling with is that your brand character comes out with 4 different, it's kind of it's a 4-word description. Okay. So mine is friendly, playful, strategy consultants. Voilà.
Okay.
Friendly, playful, strategy consultant. That is the 4 things that represents what Ice Cream for Everyone is, and really me, because I am Ice Cream for Everyone.
Yeah.
Friendly is a large part. I've taken that as like the main dominant of who I am, Willem.
Yep.
Playful is what I go for, both me, Willem, and particularly the Ice Cream for Everyone and everything I'm doing around that. Strategy is the main thing that I offer. That's what I offer as a business. And consultant is what the kind of business that it is. I'm one person. I'm an advisor. I'm a consultancy.
This the other thing that comes across. I can't remember.
That answered a question, I think.
It's fine, don't worry, because the thing that comes across is the playfulness, and and I think that's something I would tell this student to do. Play with different things, explore different things, and you will find where you want to get. If you want to be in business, the action you could take now is to start exploring and start playing with different concepts and different ideas. That idea of playfulness comes across from, I think, that ad, and I kind of want to go and watch it and see a rabbit and a guy and whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I could even share my screen and we can watch it. I don't know what it's going to come out like.
Don't do that, because it'll be it won't. Not. I've tried sharing videos on Zoom; it doesn't work very well.
Doesn't work. Okay.
But when
we'll add the links though.
We will, yes. Certainly, when I was younger, there was from my background and my culture, a massive expectation of you have to do well. I remember having a conversation with, so even the idea that this student is asking me, I want to do this, what do I do now? That basic idea,
Mhm.
I had no idea what I wanted to do, but instead there was an expectation heaped on me that I would do this. I remember having a conversation with my grandmother at a family gathering, and I said, oh, I'm interested in psychology. I'm interested in something, business and psychology. She said, why do you want to do psychology? Don't you want to become a doctor? Now, there is a certain cultural stereotype that goes
Of
with
course.
that. And she said, like, or a lawyer. And I was like, at the time, I do not want to be a doctor. I did really well at the exams to be able to do science later. Wasn't interested in it. I love science, but it just wasn't what I wanted to do. So I didn't want to be a I didn't want to be a doctor. But when I said I wanted to do psychology, my grandmother didn't really like it. My dad was like, be an accountant because it's recession proof and you have chartered status, which means you can get a job and like you won't have to worry. And there's a certain amount of insecurity that goes with when you're an immigrant, as my parents and my grandparents were coming into a country, like buying a house, having a safe place, having a job that's secure was really
Sure.
important. Those values are really important. But
Yeah.
when I said I wanted to do psychology, it was like, no, you don't do that. So there was no
Yeah, and I'm sure that happens
space
to
to
a lot of
explore.
young people still,
Yes.
vast majority, right?
Yeah. So there is an expectation for
The
young
funny
people
point is
to
also,
know.
it's not funny, but it's like your parents or other parents did they, well, maybe other families. I was going to mention trade jobs, be a plumber.
Okay.
In
Yeah.
many cases, plumbers are going to make more money or at least as much as a lawyer. And it's also a trade job. It's this very skill. It's a great skill. I think it should be a lot more I don't
Respected.
know, respected, well regarded, or considered, and just not. But
That's the other thing about a lot of the pupils in my school. A lot of the drive is money, to make money.
I
And
was going to ask about that, because when they say go into business, what is that? Are you just like money hunting? Which is fine if you are, but you might as well say so.
well, yes, yeah. I don't know. I don't think they would necessarily say that. But whenever I fill the board with hashtags, which I haven't done for a while, and I say hashtag money doesn't bring happiness, they all disagree. They all disagree. Of course, money brings you happiness because, and then
Up
my
to a
counter
certain
argument,
point, that whole
yes,
study about
exactly.
there was a
Explain it.
study, and I've never looked at how wide the study was, but I do believe in it instinctually. But that was in the States, and I don't know how many people they researched it with, but they said that up to the point where you have everything you need, and that ratio was $70,000 at that time, whenever that came out, to
Mhm.
say that money made you happy up to that threshold, $70,000 a year, and everything above that was just like made no difference.
Yeah.
Which makes sense from the perspective of you need to have enough not to worry about having a roof over your head, being able to be warm in the winter, being able to go on holidays once in a while, being able to, that doesn't even, by the way, that doesn't even talk about being satisfied in your day-to-day job where you're spending a third or more of your life. That's
Yeah.
a different question.
Yep.
But that question still accounts for money doesn't buy happiness,
Yes.
because you could have that amount of money and be okay, is safe, and still be miserable because you're spending like a third to a half of your life in a job that you don't like.
Yeah.
And you're in business,
But
but
why?
why? And that's the and that's the good question of why you're living your life, and that you're ill-equipped to be replying to, or ill-equipped, or you're not allowed at all when you're a young person to be replying to the kinds of people in your family, like you mentioned, your parents, your uncles and aunts, who are like, be a lawyer, be a doctor, be even a plumber, be a whatever, go to university, do those things. Sometimes you don't even have a choice. And what's a bit of a shame is not the choice to explore what is it that you want to do, and what it is that you want to be studying. And I think and this is kind of like, it's echoing back to the conversation that we had last week about why think of a single job. It's not wrong to think of a vocation if you're really clear that's what you want to be doing. But think about the quality and the value of your life and what you're looking for in your life. And that does go back a lot to, at the risk of repeating ourselves maybe every time, to knowing yourself.
Oh, yes.
And not without expecting an answer, a clear answer to know yourself right now necessarily, but to endeavor to learn more about what you're interested in, and also why you're interested in. That also means like what, I don't know, like to be cliche about it, what makes your heart beat faster, what excites you, what you're interested in. And ideally, and this is, again, we're going to quote Harari quickly, but I saw I watched a video where he was talking to a bunch of students in London, and I think they were a little bit older. They were, I think they were graduate students or university students, I believe. I'll send you the video. And he said that in a few different articles, and I mean, I'm going to just parrot because I really like it. So people were asking them exactly the same question about, like, you're telling us everything is going to change. So what should we be looking for, and what should we be studying? What kind of jobs should we be going for? And he said, well, it's not the right way to think about it. I would say, because everything's going to increasingly change so much, what you should be going for is look for one question that matters to you, make it broad, and make it something that's going to be forcing you to cross the lines between disciplines.
Wow.
Because you can be a discipline specialist, but increasingly the problems that the world faces needs people to coordinate. That's the second part of his question. So to be specialist in one field is not enough to solve modern complex world problems, because it's going to be attaching to, you know, what we have going on with the pandemic is an economic problem, it's a health problem, it's a sociological problem, it's a relationship problem, it's a technological problem,
it's a scientific problem,
it's a scientific problem, and that's and I say one, but it's many problems. So if you think, okay, well, I want to go in that direction, whatever matters to me, a question, he says, well, the question, broad as it may, will help you guide your direction. That's one area. And then the second one that he was talking about, and that's not necessarily job related, but is also to say, okay, if something matters to you and you'd like to make it happen in the world, work with other people, because you can't make it happen by yourself. That means join a company, join an organization, join a cause of people, or create one so that you're doing something with other people, because by yourself, you're not going to have much impact. Which is ironic, knowing that in our society, everybody wants to be a famous YouTuber. And we were just talking about Joe Rogan, thinking, okay, well, I could be that one person that influences millions. Maybe, and maybe I could be Harari that also influences millions and is one person. But the bigger likelihood is to be part of an organization that is widespread and act for something that is bigger than just one person, because that organization is going to keep going. That is also like the interest in studying a brand and a group of people, because I take the word brand as a broad unit as a broad angle to start looking at any kind of organization as well.
So the two questions,
from personal to organizational,
the two things you just said are incredibly powerful. Incredibly powerful.
I'm really just parroting what.
No, I know, but
I'm quoting the same person I did last week,
which is fine, because. But this, I think I'd never heard that before. I think it's brilliant. But the idea of the problems that we're going to be facing require interdisciplinary thinking justifies terrible tangents, by the way.
Absolutely.
And the idea of asking yourself a broad question and allowing yourself to explore as a young person, I think is great. And I think the thing I would add to that is play is so important. So you're reading the Stuart Brown book, or you're about to. The book that I read that I think is better than the Stuart Brown book is by
Peter Gray. You need to give me the title, by the way.
Peter Gray is the author.
Yeah, you did you give me the title last time? I can't remember.
No, anyway, I didn't give you the title. I didn't remember the author, but I remember the author. It's Peter Gray. Okay. He's written a lot about education and the importance of play and the importance of learning, and how schools don't actually allow the space for play, and play is essential for developing creativity, cooperation, all of these things that are going to be essential in the future. And what I want to tell my student is play, explore, see what interests you, see what excites you, and go down avenues and zigzag. It's not about everything being in a straight line. It's about what is tangents. Like I listened to your career and what you've done, and it was like following something and exploring. And that's the place to start.
Also, for me, taking opportunities. It's also, you know, there's that analogy of opportunities are just kind of trains or subway lines or whatever passing through. You take it or not.
Yeah.
And to be able to notice that opportunity is coming about, but a mix of things. So you and you mix it with making your own luck. So you take a lot of actions in one direction, then something else shows either in that direction or something that's a tangent or something different. You're like, oh yeah, I'll go in that direction. Just like when I had the opportunity of working in coaching and training and development, I was looking for a job in graphic design, and that came up, and I was like, okay, I kind of like that too. That was completely different.
Yeah.
And I was taking me in a direction I had no idea, but I went for it because I was inspired by the moment, and that opportunity was there, and I just took it.
Steve Jobs calls it.
And I also needed money.
Forward.
I mean,
yeah, there is that. It can often, you want to take care of yourself. Steve Jobs calls it join the dots forward. And I've used that in an assembly before, because you don't know where it's going to lead, but when you look back, you see that it brought you to where you were.
Yeah.
And
it's difficult to do when you're in high school, because
yes.
the system is asking you for one specific direction. So then you try to go as broad as possible, or somebody's going to say, well, study science and math because that's the most broadly applicable. It's not necessarily a bad way to think. I was just a little bit biased in like, oh, I want to be an artist and I'm going to study literature. I won't study science. That's not me, which is a bit silly after the fact. Now I'm like, oh, maybe I should have done that, but there's not really anybody to tell me, and it's fine. It's just,
the phrase I hear from students a lot is, I want to keep my options open.
Which is understandable, because the whole system is forcing you to close them, which is silly, because the jobs and the way the job market works is not, unless you're going for a vocational thing like lawyer or doctor, which is the same thing we said last time, or plumber, actually, for that matter. The system forces you to choose to study a particular field or discipline.
Yes.
That doesn't necessarily have any very clear applicable jobs to it, other than having the name of the degree, whatever it is, so that you can say that you have it. So you have the master's stamp. Then it doesn't really help you much more to figure out which way you're going, job-wise. No, because you can go anywhere in the, in the kind of the wide service world. But then there's other questions that are arising now about with the pandemic and problems to come with climate change and everything else on, do we have a way too big service industry, and is it really necessary? How many of those jobs are going to change and be replaced by automation like we talked about last time? So anyway, I guess maybe we can be more specific on the next steps that your student can take or students can take, which was part of the question. Yeah. But so the one, I definitely go back to be specific. What does going in business mean? If you're just chasing money for money's sake, you're probably not. Then start a lemonade stand or whatever equivalent. Start selling something. You'll learn from it anyway.
I would add to that something I've been thinking about this week, which is look for where you can make a difference, or look for where you can provide value. And
I mean, that's what I would say overall. It's like what interests you rather than trying to chase money. And it's understandable to chase money if you don't have much. When you're a teenager, you don't necessarily have much, however much. Well, actually, it doesn't. That's not true. No, some people have no questions about that. But I did when I was a kid. We didn't have a lot of money, and but I was not so worried about it. I was never particularly. I mean, I worry if my bank account's going empty, and I like to live comfortable, and I do pretty well. Not now, but just overall. But when I was growing up, I wasn't so concerned with money. So I don't know if it's an area or if it's a generational thing, or
I mean, it's
I don't know.
So these guys who are 15, 16 would have been pretty young when 2008 happened. If 15, am I getting it? Yeah, they would have been really young. So they wouldn't have, so the ones who were slightly older would have been kind of aware of what was going on, maybe. And then like that's going to have an effect. That's going to have an impact on your thinking and your outlook. And that it's possible that that's maybe what's driving people with the money and wanting to take care of themselves and all of that. But I think sometimes the pupils I teach, or the ex-pupils, they confuse getting paid and providing value, because they're very.
I mean, everybody does.
Do you think? Really?
Well, I don't know if everybody does. I'm just making wide generalization. Obviously.
But providing value, like I don't even, so I get asked, sir, how come you're a teacher? Why are you just a teacher? How did you know that you wanted to be a teacher when you were in school? No, I didn't.
Are you a weird? Are you an outlier for them? Like it's not normal. You should be. What do they think you should be?
Well, because I teach business, they think I should like start my own business, because they're like, oh, you talk about all this stuff. Like, why don't you start your own business and you can make loads of money and not be a teacher?
But they don't. So the other thing, the privilege of youth is also you don't realize that it is really, really, really difficult to do all this stuff.
What stuff?
To start a business, to be a YouTuber and have a lot of views.
Yeah.
And you can have a lot of views on YouTube. I heard recently somebody told me of a YouTuber they know who has, let's say, about 100,000 subscribers, something like that, like that range.
Sounds impressive.
And tens of thousands of views on every video. Okay.
That sounds very impressive.
Right. And they have YouTube ads through the YouTube advertising program, right? And they make about 25,000 a year.
Wow.
With that.
Wow.
And they put a lot of work in that video, and that's not, they can't live off of only that.
Wow. Wow. That puts it in context with people.
And know that if you're going for, I want to live off of the advertising on YouTube, you're giving most of your life's work and money to YouTube to begin with. That's for sure. And two, that the more it goes and the more people are on it, the more stuff is going on, the more attention you're asking of everybody, including ourselves. We're asking attention of people, but we're not advertising on it. Anyway, it's not worth much. You're not going to make much money on advertising, and it's not going in the right direction for that. It's going to be even worse than before. So, and even though I wanted to go into advertising, and this links back to the question that you were having on like, what value are you providing? It's not wrong to be using advertising for money necessarily, but what products are you advertising? You have very little control over that if you're advertising via YouTube. You don't know what brands are advertised on something. You can go for sponsorship. I have several articles of YouTubers that are they're basically growing hungry, but that have to maintain that image on Instagram or YouTube, whatever type of influencer they are, that they're having the fantastic, fantasy, amazing life or whatever image they might have, regardless of the conditions in the background. The actual real conditions are that it's a very steep pyramid in the same style that there's only like the 0.1% that are extremely wealthy in the world. It's only the tiniest minority that are making a lot of money. And of course, that's what everybody's watching. And then like the second degree, there's a tiny, tiny portion that is making good money. Then there's a tiny, like bigger portion, but then there's the whole, that idea of the long, what's it called? It doesn't matter, it'll come back to me. Anyway, there's tons of people making nothing and that are still spending a lot of time. And I've worked in advertising for years, and I've worked in, like you've worked in media as well, on advising brands on what is the message, this is what you should be doing to be successful. But when I started my podcast and when I started my website, my newsletter, you realize how actually so difficult it is to grow that stuff. To grow an audience, you have to be on top of it like crazy, and there's no guarantee of any kind of success.
I think that's a lot of the times what the younger people want. They want the certainty, they want the guarantee that if they do this, it's going to have this. And I can't give them that. I cannot give them that. There's no way of knowing, because I look back at what I've done, and they also, like, to get back to that thing about like, why are you just a teacher? Why don't you have a business?
Just a teacher.
So
it's great to be a teacher, but the kids are like, I can only imagine they're going with suspicion, going, where did you fail to end up here? And plus, you seem to be a good person. I don't understand.
That must be what they're thinking. But one of the key...
I thought that when I was a kid. I'm like, this person's teaching me design. Like when I was a kid. So that was when I was in design school, teaching me design. So they must have failed somewhere to end up teaching design. And now I have friends who are designers and other friends who are strategists that are going towards the teaching lifeline. And I'm like, I should teach as well. One, it's good money. It's probably more steady than what I'm doing now. It would be interesting to be giving and interacting with young people. And also, I don't really care if they think I failed. I don't have anything to prove to them.
Young people, being a teacher is probably the funniest job you could ever do. funniest job. But
Yeah.
one of the things that really shifted my thinking was this idea of entrepreneur versus intrapreneur. And
Yeah, you talk about that a few times. I
like,
saw you post a video about it this week.
That was and it's only now I realize that I've always done that. I've always been the one questioning, coming up with ideas, suggesting them, and then they do them. But I never appreciated it now, what a valuable thing that is in a company. Yeah, in my school, I'm the one that's going, I'm going to try this. I was one of the people who had one of their lessons videoed and then played in front of the colleagues, so that my colleagues watched me they watched a video of me teaching a year 11 lesson, like a fifth year, like awkward group, basically teaching a lesson. They watched part of the video, and in the back of the video, there's this guy who's like throwing up a bottle and catching it, and I hadn't really noticed. And my colleagues are watching this video. Like to be pushing the envelope is what I'm interested in.
But are you interested in? So I think you're interested in it for its own sake. And what I mean by that is, if your school didn't listen, or whatever organization, but your school in this case,
yeah,
didn't or doesn't listen to whatever you're suggesting, do you give up or do you keep going?
Oh,
where I'm going with this, I'll be a bit more specific.
Yeah.
And this is advice that you can find everywhere. And if your students start looking at, like, you know, if you just Google like what steps I should be doing to start a business or a blog or a video YouTube channel, etc., because that's the advice I found when I started my podcast. You will find it everywhere, repeated on tons of places.
Yeah.
Is to pick something that you're genuinely interested in enough for its own sake. That is, I would call it an expression of yourself, of your passion, of what interests you. So that whether people are watching, tuning in, listening, reading or not, the effort is worth it because it's something that you're genuinely interested in. Because if you're only doing it for the result, meaning the audience, the money or whatever, you're going to burn when you realize it's not working, or if it doesn't work.
You've just answered that guy's question, which is almost a great place to end.
Yeah.
What should he do? Like, so when it comes to me pushing the envelope, would I do it? If probably I would. I was awkward in school. And
it doesn't you can still have disappointments everywhere. It doesn't mean that it's not disappointing, right?
Yeah, totally. But I've got to a stage where I know myself enough, and I know what I like, that I know that what I'm saying is of value to the decision makers, because I want things to work. So I know how to do that. And I realize I can help other people do that who don't have the same experience as me. So that's what I'm interested in.
Yeah.
And that's why this live streaming podcast exists. Where can we provide value to the younger people for the future? And I love what you said there. It was a direct answer to.
And you'll have disappointments and uncertainties. And I have uncertainties all the time. I'm like, which direction am I going in? I look elsewhere and I start looking at other people, what they're doing. And I'm like, I should do what they're doing. They seem to be successful, but I have no idea if they are successful because I don't know what their goals are. I don't know what's going on in their head.
So if we're going to have to finish right now. So I think I would sum it up. Know yourself, do something you're interested in, and do it now. Look for where you can provide value for people and explore, and you'll find it. It isn't about
and do it now. Give yourself Give yourself deadlines.
Yeah.
No, make them up. That's what worked since last week. I told you, I told you, okay, I'm going to get this done. And then I thought, okay, I'm going to get this done because I told James, but I should go a step further. And I actually went and scheduled a workshop for Wednesday. So now, not only I promised you, but I have 3 people I barely know who are expecting like a really good workshop now. So I better deliver.
Yeah. And you will.
Yeah.
Great. I think that's a wrap.
Fantastic.
As they say.
Okay.
We're still live. So can I talk about next week's mug? What should I do for next week?